Good afternoon, my name's Clay with the Clayway here in Grand Rapids, Muskegon, Western Michigan area. Today we're going to do a wheel bearing in a Dodge Ram 1500.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
I don't have any video doing this kind of stuff, and there's a couple little neat tricks that you can do when you're doing this job to make it simpler and easier for you. It took me about an hour to do this. Really could have took me a lot less if I didn't run into some troubles.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
One of the things that you're going to find the funniest is the joke that my soon-to-be ex-son-in-law makes about my teeth. The coolest thing about this is I'm going to tell you how to save $100 on this wheel bearing, if I really mean what I say. First thing we're going to do is jack the truck up underneath the control arm. One of the Colin Crew truck here. So we need to check the front end. I'm pretty sure it's got a bad wheel bearing. It shouldn't do that. Anytime you're working on a front end, you want to grab the tire and the wheel at the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock position, wiggle it this way. If it wiggles this way, you've either got a bad inner tie rod and outer tie rod. What you do is you look behind it as somebody wiggles it. Same thing for wheel bearings and ball joints. If you wiggle it this way and it moves a little bit, bad ball joint. If you wiggle it all four ways, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, if it moves all four ways, you've got a bad wheel bearing. So we're going to take a 22 millimeter, take these lug nuts off, and I'm going to show you what happens with these 10 covered lug nuts. They get stuck in the sockets and they don't want to come out. Now, a lot of times, the best thing to do is just try to wiggle it. But if that doesn't work, it's sometimes because the 10 underneath the lug nut gets rust inside it. So you just take that thing off there, grab yourself an extension right here, take a hammer, and you hit it right here. You roll it on the ground. Sometimes it takes a lot of hits to get them out of there. Just depends on how they are. They have this casing here, and it's real garbage. Now, if you ever have a wheel that won't come off, turn around, take the bottom side of your foot, and hit it up against there. This gives you more leverage, and then that allows the wheel to come off there. So if it's ever stuck and you can't just tack it and pull it off, that's the way you get it off. What you want to do is you want to turn the wheel to where the caliper's at the back so it's easier to work on. Now we're going to compress this caliper here, and if you're changing brake pads, the best way to do this is to take a flathead screwdriver, stick it in between the brake pad and the rotor. Generally you won't damage the rotor, and if you do, it's going to be minimal, but you'll probably ruin the brake pads. What this does is this allows you to push in the calipers simply by holding pressure against them. And it allows you, once you get all the way done, to not have to get out C-clamps or a pressure releasing tool. And all you got to do is hold pressure on the screwdriver, and eventually it will force that brake fluid up there. Now, if your wheel bearing is as bad as mine, more than likely your brakes would go soft because the wheel is doing this and it's pushing the brake pads back because it's so bad. And you'll hear it creaking and moaning, and if it gets that bad, I'd recommend stop driving it right away because it's pretty unsafe. This wheel bearing here is about to freaking fall out. Now these right here are probably standard because the 12 millimeter kind of is a little bit sloppy on there. But I'm not going to go look for standard wrenches. It seems to work, and I can take these off. So we're going to remove these 2 bolts. And now we're going to end up removing the whole brake caliper itself and the brake caliper bracket because we need to remove the rotor to get down to the wheel bearing. However, I take them apart and take them up separately. That's just me and the way that I do things. The brake caliper depressed all the way in, which I don't have to because I'm not changing the brake pads. It will normally just pop off up here, but since I'm not changing the brake pads, it wasn't that long ago that I dropped it. I'll just let it hang there. I'll remove the brake pads, and they obviously come off there pretty simple. And my rotor's floppy. I'm gonna remove these bolts right here, which I believe are 22 millimeters. And that's another reason that we turn the wheel. Caliper bracket bolts are 21 millimeters. We got some really rusty bolts in here. But the good thing is we don't have an axle, so we don't have to mess around with that. So now we're gonna get the socket for the back and take this wheel bearing bolts out. So these back bolts are 18 millimeters, and if you're not using big boy tools, you'll definitely want to spray these down with some penetrant and have a big breaker bar available to be able to get these suckers loose. If you live in the north, if you live in the south, which I found you very rarely use torches or anything, I don't need this extension. I'm gonna tell you, it's been a long time since I changed a wheel bearing on a two-wheel drive, because in Michigan, we need four-wheel drives just about everywhere we freaking go. This thing looks like holy hell, and it's got 240,000 miles on it, but I only paid 300 bucks for it. And the wheel bearing, along with the fuel pump, are the only things I've done to it since I've owned it for the last year. Oh, I don't give a crap if it's two-wheel drive. Plus, there's a great story behind this truck, so look up my son, Colin Rogers, and see what happened to him. Made this truck because even though he's still in a coma, his bullied and broken body and his good will always be better than their best. So this inside one, it's gonna press up against my back here, so I'm just gonna I got my big, long 1/2-inch drive ratchet that won't fit inside there. With the 3-inch extension, I think I might be able to get it loose, maybe. That's gonna be interesting. So I've got an Astro 18mm 1/2-inch wobble, which I got off of Amazon. I'll put a link down in the description below. This is gonna work. Now I'm not using a 3/8 because these bolts are pretty tight, and more than likely your 3/8 will break. I'm hoping that these don't, but they didn't. So that's good stuff. On most wheel bearings now, I would remove the whole spindle if it's as rusty as this. But because there's no axle in this, I can get to the back of it relatively easily. So I'm gonna probably get an air hammer out and try to push this out. Usually this rust will cake in there so bad, you can't get the son of a gun off. Yeah, especially up here. Because a lot of us order parts off the interwebs nowadays, make sure that your bearing is the right bolt pattern. And if you've got a four-wheel drive, make sure your axle sticks through there. Just 2 weeks ago, I was doing a wheel bearing. One of the wheel bearings I had wasn't the right bolt pattern. The wheel bearings I had wouldn't fit on the axle. Can you imagine how sucky that was, taking all of this apart and not being able to fit it in there at 8 o'clock at night? So needless to say, what I did was went and bought a $130 wheel bearing and threw the new one back in the package. Yeah, that's a good quick way to get yourself kicked out of a parts store. So obviously I'm just kidding. Or am I? Well, them wheel bearings off the internet were only 30 bucks. Ones at the parts store were 130 bucks. One might say you could make quite a bit of money doing something like that. I'm just saying, but I'm not saying. But it went through my mind.
It's very illegal. Don't do that.
Are you sure it's illegal?
I'm pretty sure it's illegal, yeah.
You think it is?
Yep.
I don't know.
That's why you've never done it, right?
I just feel terrible about it if I ever did anything like that.
Not like you would ever do it.
No, me, never. No. Now, I want you to be careful when you're trying to knock this thing out. You need to keep in mind that this bearing is up inside that casting this far. And when you're hitting it, you just hit it a little bit around the edges to keep pushing it out. It's gonna take some time. If you don't do it that way, it's gonna get kittywampus in there and get stuck. And trust me, once it wedges inside there, it's not fun. So hit it just a little bit knock it out. Now I'm gonna go into the toolbox, grab my air hammer, a flat bit, and a chisel bit. Shot my load right out. Yep, keep shooting my load out. So I'm gonna get a different tool. Now when you're dealing with rusty stuff like me, one of the best things that you can do is use some penetrant. You can also use heat, but this is aluminum, or this is aluminum cast right here, I think. Anyways, we're gonna lube that sucker up. It's always good to use a lot of lube. Now there's a couple of ways that you could remove a wheel bearing that's rusted in like this, and one of them that I think is the most practical is with a pipe wrench. You can obviously just put it on there, hit the end, and spin the bearing and hopefully get it out. You can also put the rotor back on, tighten down the lug nuts, like 3 of them, and then put the pipe wrench on there as well. They make tools that work similar to this pipe wrench. Bigger pipe wrench, the better, would work the best. They make these that you bolt to the wheel hub, and you just use a hammer and smack the crap out of it until it comes off. Doesn't work as good as heat though. I couldn't find mine that day, but I'll put a link down below of tools that you can buy off of Amazon for doing this. You could use a slide hammer to get this rusty crap out, heat, lots of different things, but we're gonna try it this way because I think this is cool. And by the way, I actually learned this from another YouTube channel that's a guy that follows my channel. I think that he did this in one of his videos. His name's Shade Tree Mechanic, does a lot of stuff with General Motors. Great guy, been following me for years. He struggled with picking up the ladies.
That doesn't need to be on YouTube.
So you're saying the boat ride guy needs to be on YouTube or not?
Definitely not on YouTube.
Oh, okay. I suppose we could take a chisel and get in the back of here as well. I need to tell that story. That story needs to be out there. Now, one of the things that you could do is if you had 2 people with you, you could have somebody hitting on this and then use some chisel bits in the back trying to free it up. That would be nice, but we only have a cameraman and he doesn't get his hands dirty. Now, something else that you need to know, using the shortest chisel is going to give you the most impact. As I chisel on this with my air hammer, I push down on the pipe wrench. This helps separate the 2 parts. If you do separate it, move. If you see it separated a little bit, move to another spot so you gradually work the bearing out and don't get it kittywampus inside the spindle. See, that's moved it out just a little bit. I can get my fingernail up underneath there. Now I need to move to a different location. Just keep working around. The reason I'm showing you all of this is because I like to show you things, how to do them without breaking out tools that you may or may not have. I prefer to do things as simple as possible with the most tools that most people have. All right, go grab me the torches. All right, do nothing but burn through that one. Now, I'm not really too worried about burning through this dust cover. It's rusty as crap and it's a dust cover. Nobody really cares. You can replace yours if you want, if you end up burning through it like mine, but it's really not going to hurt anything. Now, I'm heating up the metal on the aluminum casting. I'm not heating up the bolt heads and stuff like that because what we don't want to do is expand the actual bolts. We want to expand the casting. Here in a moment, I'm going to grab my impact and start hitting that back of there as I do this. Looks like it's starting to come out. Notice how I grab my air hammer and I take my one arm and I put pressure on the back of it to force that bearing out of there.
Hey.
Look at me go. Oh, look at this. Look down here. Dude, look at how many bearings are missing out of there. That's crazy. That's why that sucker would move.
It's missing as many bearings as you are teeth, Clay.
I'm not fucking smiling, okay?
If you've ever wondered why I have a mouth like a meth addict, it's because my dog ate my false ones, and they're expensive. So keep in mind, if anyone else can do it, you can do it too. Don't be the next to them, be the absolute first of you. And if you want to donate to my channel, well, maybe I can get me some new damn teeth, but from what I can tell, it's about 20 grand, so it's gonna be a bit. If you're wondering why this was such a pain in the butt,
Automotive industry stopped making control arms and spindles and stuff out of steel. They started making it out of aluminum cast. When you reduce steel to aluminum, this electrolysis starts to get produced inside there. Frickin' literally seizes these things back together. We shouldn't have had this hard a time getting this bearing out, and in the southern states we definitely wouldn't. So now all we got to do is take this apart, take the wiring out, put our new bearing in. Now before we start reassembling everything, if yours was rusty like mine, I'm going to take some emery cloth or a round file and clean this all up. Then if you've got some brake anti-seize, it's that silver stuff, I'll post a picture right here and put a link down below. We could put that around here. That'll help it not be stuck the next time if you ever end up having to change it again. Now make sure your dust cover looks like this. These back bolts get torqued down to 149 foot-pounds. ABS wire goes down in between the clamps here, and these simply clamp onto the brake line. Now I'm going to tell you right now, these large bolts that hold on this caliper bracket go to 130 foot-pounds with red Loctite. But I'm also going to tell you, don't be a dummy and over-tighten your caliper bolts. Look up the torque spec, or just snug them down. The only thing that they are is a pin that slides back and forth. You don't want to leave them too loose, but you don't want to tighten them up too much, and you'll be safe. I never tighten these down because they're so small of thread on the bolts, they'll strip out, especially on older Chryslers. Whenever you're reassembling brakes, make sure you take a file, clean all this scale buildup on, so when you go to put your clips back on there, they fit on there and seat properly, or you won't be able to get your brake pads on correctly. Whenever you're doing something and you want something new, don't look for cheaper prices. Look for ways to be able to afford the more expensive one, then look for the cheaper prices. My name's Clay with the Clay Way, and I hope you enjoyed this video today. Put it back together, and it was muy grato. We got a video coming out about this particular truck, and the fuel pump went out a couple weeks later. It's a great video because, as you can tell, you're than shit. The fuel pump wouldn't fit, but I came up with an ingenious solution that you may be able to do in your driveway. Please consider subscribing, clicking the notification, sharing my videos. Give me them sweet old thumbs up. If you've got a question for me, you can hit me up on Clay's AC and Auto Repair on the Facebook Messenger. I can't help you with baby mama drama, but hopefully I can help you with your whip. I'll at least try. Don't be the next to them, be the first to you, and if anyone else can do it, you can do it too. God bless, folks. Have the greatest of days.